What do you think of when you hear about the country of China? If you were Chinese, you might think of one of the things the Chinese value most about their culture: how they write. It's called calligraphy. Before you know how to read and write, you draw pictures to share information. The Chinese language is based on pictures. Does that sound simple? Not exactly. There are over 5,000 Chinese characters, all of them composed of tiny, precise lines, but it wasn't always so complicated. The person who drew this ancient cave painting was making a record of an event. During his lifetime, there was no written language, so in order to communicate with others, he used pictures. The Chinese language in use today is based on the same idea. The language has changed over time, but not very much. In ancient China, the first symbol for the sun was drawn like this. You can see that it looks like the sun. Over time, it turned into this. The symbol for water was originally drawn this way. It looks like a stream. Today, this is how it looks. The meaning of each Chinese character depends on how it is used. When you combine the characters for electronic and voice, you get a new word, telephone. In ancient times, there was no paper to write on. It hadn't been invented yet. Instead, bones and shells were used. The ancient Chinese believed in fortune-telling. They would heat these bones and shells until they cracked. The lines created were thought to tell a person's future. They would record the fortune directly onto the bones to keep a record. The Chinese invented paper out of tree pulp in 104 AD, and it replaced bones and shells 4,000 years later. Chinese calligraphy is practiced in much the same way. John Wang learned calligraphy from his father. He has devoted his life to preserving this ancient tradition. The art of Chinese calligraphy is based on 5 principles. The first is posture. It is important to sit up straight and be balanced and disciplined, so you don't have any extra weight on one part of your body. The second principle is a good knowledge of your tools. The handle of the brush pen is made from bamboo, and the brush from animal hair. The ink is mixed on an inkstone. The ink stick is made from the resin and the ashes of pine trees. Resin is a sticky substance that hardens the ashes, so you need to combine it with water to turn it into its liquid form. The mixing motion warms up the calligrapher's arm, and the paper is specially designed to absorb ink. Secondly, it is important to know the strokes. Chinese calligraphers move the brush in very specific ways, not just from side to side, but up and down as well. The top part of the brush is a reservoir. It holds the ink. It is very important to know how much pressure to apply, or you might have an accident. The third thing to remember is control of the brush. This is something that is only achieved with a lot of practice. Master calligraphers will tell you that the fourth principle is finding a rhythm in your calligraphy. Notice how these characters seem to flow? The fifth and final principle is drawing the characters in a balanced way, making sure all the lines are in the right place. The chop is one of the earliest forms of printing, and it was invented by, you guessed it, the Chinese. Most Chinese have their own chop. It is like their own personal signature. Today, a chop is required on most official documents. That includes bank statements, checks, and works of art. John Wang also works to preserve this ancient art form. He hand carves each chop out of a soapstone. This is one of his prized works of art. It is a poem about a very famous Chinese philosopher named Confucius. Confucius's beliefs still play a big part in Chinese culture today. He He believed in being filial, which means honoring your elders. John Wong is filial because he carries on the thing that his father loved most, calligraphy. Every day, John practices. Each session begins the same way. He mixes his ink and takes brush pen to paper. It's easy to see why the Chinese consider this ancient art form one of their cultural treasures.